Today, one of my absolute favorite episodes, another one of those that took 8 months to record. Yes, 8 months. That's because we're doing some time traveling. You're going to get to hear from a single mother with 3 kids who sold her house, quit her job, and moved to Mexico. I talked to her before she left for her trip, after she had gotten rid of all of her belongings and was about to make this big change. And then 8 months later, after she's already moved to Mexico, checked in with her to find out if some of her fears came true, how life is going down there, if it's really worth moving to become an expat, how she's adjusted on the fly to her new situation, what she's doing about income, how much it actually costs to live down in Mexico right now. She's got some great ideas around setting up a framework to do this with a family. And there are tons of tips along the way for anybody and everybody, whether you have a family or you're just an individual that's considering moving to another country at some point. How does that change you, submersing yourself in another culture and getting out of your own? Do you feel that calling? Is that something you've thought about before? Well, you're going to dig this episode. It's happening right now, my friend. So buckle up, because this is a fun one. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey there, it's Jason with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you so kindly for hanging out. Letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. No long intro here, because I kind of gave you the skinny going into this show, right? This is one of those unique shows that I record every once in a while, and only every once in a while, because they take so long to make, and I'm always so proud of them. And I really want to thank my new friend, Jenita, for taking the time to do this with me. She sent me an email a while back, and then we recorded 8+ months ago. We recorded a show when she was about to move to Mexico, as I mentioned at the top, and then 8 months later, we recorded again, and we packed it all into this one show just for you, so you can really see that transition to travel and what that can do to a person, and how did she overcome some of those obstacles? What were some of the mindset challenges going in? Just so many universal questions for anybody that's considering making a big leap, whether you're just going to travel around the world, whether you're going to travel around the world, say for a year, do some long-term travel, or move somewhere. You get to see the whole picture, one person's story, and she's just a wonderful person, had so much good advice along the way that I know you can take away from this show and apply to your situation in some way, shape, or form. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. Please enjoy, and I will see you on the other side, my friends. I don't want to miss this enthusiasm. I'm getting some good vibes here already. So,
and that's why I love you.
Well, thank you. And no, I appreciate you writing and, sharing your story. And I just introduce yourself really quickly.
Well, I am a 41-year-old single mother of 3 boys. I'm an Army brat, which has a lot to do with my love of travel, I think. I am one of those people who I just seek to live like an authentic life full of new experiences, meeting people. Like, that's the kind of stuff that, like, that's my mojo, So
yeah,
I try to stay true to that. So that's who I am.
Well, okay. And just so I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is it Jenita or Jenita?
Jenita.
Jenita. Oh,
Janita.
darn it. I was like, it's either Janetta or Jenita.
Okay. And some people even call me Juanita. I'm like, really? Juanita?
Oh, come on.
Really?
That's give us a break here. Well, mad props for, first of all, being a single mom, because that's no small job. I just had my second kid. And
congrats. That's right.
Thanks. It's a lot of work. And my parents split when I was 10, I guess. So, we were with my mom a lot, and, I know it's a lot. So kudos to you. All right. I've worked a lot on military bases before, and I do understand the Army brat thing, but maybe some people are listening, they're like, never heard that term or whatever. So you should explain what that is.
Yeah, I embrace it. So Army brat is basically just an Army kid. And we kind of have like a fraternity sorority, if you will, because I don't think anyone understands. I should say military brat. You make friends, then you leave. You make friends, then you leave. You get
because
used
you're
to
only
a place.
stationed for one of your parents was in the military, so you're only there for a couple of years. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So my mom actually was in the military. She was a single mother. My mom's my Shira. My dad was killed when I was like 14 months old. So my mom was basically a teenage widow because, she had me when she was 17, but they were married. They lived in Chicago. And so she was a teenage widow. But my mother made the decision. It was always her dream, actually, to join the Marines. But because she had two dependents, I think the Marines, there's a limit or whatnot. And so she went into the Army instead. Because she did that, though, so many lives are changed. Like my grandmother lived in Hawaii for 20 years, basically because my mom was stationed there and she moved there and she just stayed and she raised my cousins there. So now my cousin Cameron is married to a local, a Hawaiian, and they have 5 kids. You know what I mean? And like he's basically Hawaiian. My uncle is there. My cousin went to college there. Another cousin moved there, found her husband there. And so now she's a military wife, has 2 kids. They've lived in Italy. My other cousin joined the military, like all because of one decision, because of one person, like so many different lives were changed. So my mom's my Shira.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Yeah, when you trace it back like that and you can think, oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you could trace it back to this one thing and say, look at all of the things that have come out of that just from that one move. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows where your journey and your kid's journey is going to get traced back to now? Because this move that you're doing right now could be like one of those. Well, I mean, in a way, it's almost impossible for it not to be, right? Because anytime you make a choice, you're giving something else up, but you're also embracing a new path. I just stole that word from you because you were saying you embraced the Army brat or the military brat lifestyle. And I mean, I've heard both takes on that. Like, I don't know if that's a choice or if it's just like a mental thing, but I've talked to people who have done that where they've moved around and they just didn't like it and they associate that with having a bad childhood or it wasn't like a fun thing for them or a positive thing for them. And I've talked to other people that are on the other end of the spectrum. They're super positive. They're like, oh, well, that taught me like how to meet new people and make connections quickly. When you say you embraced that because that was your childhood, right? You were moving every 2 years for your whole childhood?
I would say maybe every 3 to 4, although between the end of 6th grade and the end of 9th grade, I went to 5 different schools. So that was probably the most at any one time. But I think one, it made me more empathetic with people. I find that I tend to make sure people feel like they belong or feel like even when it's not my party, I'm one of those who like tries to make sure, okay, hey, make sure everyone's like feeling engaged, having a good time, which made me great in human resources. And then I find that I'm more adaptable because as an art, like when you're moving, like things are not going to be the way that they were at the last place. And so you have to learn to adapt and adapt, improvise, overcome, another military thing. But you really have to do that. And I find that that's helped me in life. Because like in an organization at work, things change. Oh, hell, it changed. Let's roll with it. Whereas other people, we used to do and we did this. And you get stuck in that mindset. So I personally, like I said, I embrace it. And I think that I learned a lot through the experience and met so many different people. I'm Facebook friends with my best friend from 7th grade,
Nice.
So it's cool.
Yeah, so you've been able to still keep in touch with some of those people even though you moved around.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, those are obviously great qualities to get out of that experience. And you mentioned adaptability. I mean, of course, the first thing came to mind is, well, that's great for travel too, or kind of living that life where you're just going to be on the road. You don't know what's going to happen. I do want to get into like what you're doing right now because this is a big thing. I want to talk first, I think, about the challenge of it still, the mental challenge, because even though you've had all of this change through your childhood, and you've had to adapt and improvise and overcome many times. But just because you did that doesn't mean that making a transition to long-term travel is going to be easy, right? I mean, is it still hard for you mentally to get up to this point?
Oh yeah. And I'm not one to harp on age, but the fact that I'm 41, and my mom and I kind of talked about this. This is the time in people's lives, and oh yes, we're setting roots, we're established, and I have this wonderful house, and I've been in my job 15. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. But I looked up and was like, shit, I've been working since I was 17, and I realized that it's all been in reaction to stuff. This happened, so okay, I'll do this. And I didn't really get to design what I want to do, and so I'm at a point now where, yeah, it's hard. And honestly, the hard part is I have 3 lives dependent on me. If it was just about me, like, I do it and like whatever, I can live in a 1-bedroom, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. But I have 3 little lives dependent on me. And I'm like, what if I mess up their education? Because we're homeschooling now. And it's like, what if I mess that up? And what if, people are, I'll be safe in Mexico. What if something does happen, And then the whole, like, there are so many what ifs going on in my head. But then I also look at the what if this leads to something magnificent in their lives? What if this inspires them to be da 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 da? What if this is the gateway to the purpose that I've been looking for? So I choose to focus more on those positive what ifs while still, kind of preparing myself or guarding against some of the negative that might happen. But it's scary. I sold my damn house. You know what I mean? Like I left a really great job. So it's scary. It's big and hairy and scary. But at the same time, I know within me that if I had kept going the way that I was slowly dying every day. Like I've gained in the last 2 years, I've gained like 50 pounds because I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. I was just kind of existing, so.
Well, let's
I'm
get
excited.
into where you're at right now, because just so people have a little bit of context of like literally where you're at right where we're having this conversation. I mean, the place you're at also, but what was the timeline leading up to this? I mean, you mentioned you've had kids, and we don't have to go your whole life because it's like too much to ask for one person, but when did you start thinking about leaving your job? And then jump ahead and let us know when you left and sold your house and all that stuff and your plans, so we can have a snapshot of like where you're at right now, because these are special episodes, because we're going to talk to you at some point in the future that we don't know when, but you're going to be on the road with your kids, and we're talking about all the fears now, but then we're going to see where you're at then. So this is going to be interesting. You're going to listen back to this. You're going to be like, whoa, but we don't know when. That's happening later. So let's get into the now.
So I'll go back to September of 2017. One of my coworkers left.
Okay. And that's about a year ago from the time we're recording.
It is, about a year. Yeah, it is about a year. Well, she left, and she and I had kind of had conversations anyway about she and her husband were thinking about retiring to Costa Rica, and she finally convinced him to retire. She sold her house and downsized, and I listened to the Optimal Living Daily, and so I like hipped her to that, where it's like talking minimalism and all that. And so she did it. Like she left, and they moved to Florida. And it made me stop and go, you keep talking about doing this. You keep talking about you want to do this. What are you waiting for? And then I started with a life coach and a personal trainer. And my life coach, I love life coaching because they help you pull out the truth that's already there. And I started asking myself, well, why not now? Because I kept saying, I'll do it when the kids graduate. Because again, I don't want to mess them up. And I'm like, well, you did this, and you're not messed up. So why do you think you'll mess them up? And so just talking to my life coach and journaling and meditating as best I can, because I'm horrible at meditating.
We all are.
Right? It's like,
why is it so hard just to sit still and not think? I mean, shouldn't it be easier?
Oh my God, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But I would say around the end of November, I knew, I knew I was leaving. And I knew that it would be Merida, Mexico, because I had been there for my 40th birthday. And it was the one place that I traveled to. And I kept thinking, oh God, my boys would love this. My boys would love this. Because usually, honestly, when I'm traveling without them, I am I'm thinking about them because they're my kids, but I'm like, woohoo.
Yeah, you need a break. Like, yeah, you're taking some me time then, right? I mean, that's
Right.
totally understandable.
So this was like the one time I was like, oh my gosh, like they would love this because it's such a cute little place, and like they closed the street down and did bike rides. So anyway, I would say probably in November, I knew in our life coaching group, I declared it. Like I declared, I'm moving to Mexico. I'm doing it. And so then it became, I'm the type of person, once I make a decision, oh, it's all about execution. It's like, okay, bam, 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 bam. And so I didn't initially tell my mom or my grandmother or a lot of people because at that point, it's like a new baby. You don't want everybody kissing on your baby, because they might give them germs and infect it. And so I just needed it to be me and this positive group that I was in to nurture it, if you will. And so in December, I was on I'm a travel agent on the side. I planned a New Year's Eve in New Orleans trip, and so I shared with my cousin my plan, and she was all excited for me, and she's all about it. And finally, I would say in March, because the whole time I'm doing research and I'm making a plan, and in March, I took my grandmother with me and the boys to the Smoky Mountains, and I broke the news to her. And I told my mom, like I tried to FaceTime my mom so I could tell her about the same time. So I told her, I think either right after I told my granny or right before, because these are the two women that I'm the most concerned about. My granny's 87, and they're in Nashville. I'm the only family member. They both took it so much better than I thought they would. Because I had this big, like, oh my God, my granny's going to have like a breakdown, and what I mean?
Right.
And my mom's going to call me stupid, and, but my mom has been so supportive. And like, that's where I am now at my mom's house. She's been so supportive. My granny, although she's sad about us leaving, she was so supportive. And so, I almost wish I had told them earlier, because in my mind, like, oh, they're going to freak out. So anyway, so I told them. And then after I told them, I gave notice at my job. So and that was
then
April.
then it gets really real, right? I mean, it's already real, but
oh, honey, you know what? You make a plan and life will kick it in the kneecaps. Let me tell you about that. So my last day at my job was April 20th.
And that was
2018.
About 4 months ago from the time of this recording. We're recording
Yes.
this right now. It's August 22nd, 2018, just to give everybody the timeline. So
that was April 20th, and I planned it out so that I would have, this paycheck, and got my fitness bonus. And I had a trip to South Africa planned. And so I'm like, dude, I'm not going to worry about PTO and all that. I'm just leaving, So in my mind, I had a great time planned. And the market in Nashville is hot right now because everybody's moving there. So I'm like, my friends, they sold their house in like a week, 2 days. Of course, it didn't work out that way. Of course, it took 2 months to sell my house.
That's been sort of the thing that's holding up a little bit.
Exactly. And then I didn't get as much as I wanted for it. And so, then the other fear of, do I have enough comes up. I'm still moving forward. So it didn't work out perfectly, but I'm committed now. I'm still moving forward.
I have gotten the chills multiple times during this conversation because I am so inspired by what you've done, and which is, I knew it would be inspiring because of your email and what you said, and that's why I was so excited to talk to you. And you've put in so much work to get to this point, and also just mental work too. Like, I mean, people don't realize like the logistics behind it. I don't think this whole transition to travel, I mean, the thing that fascinates me the most is it's not that there are a lot of things to take care of, certainly, but it's the mental stuff that you have to deal with so you feel comfortable with signing a contract that's saying, hey, your house is for sale, or like getting rid of your stuff and everything like that. I do want to dig into some of that stuff. I just want to pull a couple things that you said because I think they could be helpful for other people. Like, even though your granny and your mom were super supportive, people listening, they might not, they're probably like, yeah, they might not know how people are going to react. So I really like the idea of, hey, you had this supportive group and that you kind of made it public to them and just stayed within that little bubble of support for a little while until you kind of got some more confidence and strength around it. It sounds like. I think that's such a great tip, for people if they are worried about having those conversations. But then also on the flip side, don't build it up so much. Like maybe they will be supportive, right? Like you were saying in your mind that they weren't, but that you thought they weren't going to be, but then it turns out that they were all about it, right?
Yeah. And what's funny is they know me better than I thought they did, because I think anyone who knows me, this is not a huge surprise. It's not a huge surprise. Like it was going to happen at some point, But yeah, I do think finding groups that are supportive and where you have people who are kindred helps. And that's also where, honestly, podcasts, I started listening to, I think, Budget Minded Traveler first because one of my millennial friends suggested it. And then from there, like, I absolutely love podcasts because it opens up information that is not necessarily readily available to you. And sometimes you learn things that you didn't even know you thought would be interesting. You know what I mean? Like there's a show called Art of Manliness. It's for men. I don't care. I love the show. Like, and they talk about the best things. So I would say filling your mind with things that support your dream or that thing that's like, I don't know, keeping you awake. And Facebook groups. There, I didn't realize I'm not the only one. There's Single Moms in Mexico group. Who knew, right? Like, who knew? So, yeah. So that group is so great. Before I shared it with some family members and people who don't travel have been the most scary. Oh, don't go to Mexico. Oh, don't do this. And I have to remember they don't go anywhere. So they don't know. But people who have been outside the country, and I don't mean like just to the all-inclusive resorts. I mean like actually been outside like the country and experienced people, they are more open to understanding it, and they are actually excited about what may come from it. So.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like for you, I mean, it's just like the mental processing to get to this point where you're actually doing it, of the podcast and consuming. And then there was the action taking, like getting a coach and like being vocal about it and putting the intention out there. And then also you mentioned, I think the third thing was just starting to take action, right? And telling people and telling the people that were close to you, oh, you're helping your friends. And then kind of realizing, well, she just did that, and using that as inspiration. Like, well, I'm talking about this. I'm helping other people do it. Why not me? And being proactive instead of, like you said, reactive. All great things that got you to this point in your life journey. You don't have a house right now, and you don't have your stuff. I guess you sold all your stuff. Is that?
I sold everything, and people are like, are you putting it in storage? I'm like, hell no. But part of that, honestly, and I say this has been a process. So my granny had the opportunity to move back to Hawaii. Oh, what about my stuff? What about my stuff? And I'm like, damn the stuff, just we'll put it in storage or whatever. And so the lesson I learned from that was like, she was a prisoner of her stuff. Like this thing that you keep talking about you want to do, you're not doing because you're stuff. And I'm like, I don't want stuff to be that important to me, Like I said, I listen to a podcast that has a lot of minimalist ideas. Although I'm not a minimalist, I do feel like sometimes people use stuff to like, I don't know, not project, but to fill gaps, And so I sold everything pretty much. My kids, and you talk about mental preparation. One of the things I had to do is prepare my kids.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
So they've always known mommy's going to live in another country. Yeah. But again, I was going to wait till they graduated.
Well, how old are they? Just so everybody knows.
My oldest is 12 and my twins are 10, all boys. The twins, when I told them, they're like, oh, well, actually, one of them was really excited about it. The other one, not so much. He was like, can I take my guitar? Like, what about this? And my oldest was just not feeling it at all. Although he's like a preteen, and he's apathetic about a whole lot of stuff. So I don't know how to read him at all.
Sure. Inside he might be excited, but he's just trying to be cool, right?
Are you okay? Like, should I be concerned? It's like, I don't know. So what I did was for their the twins' 10th birthday, which their birthday is a day after mine, I took all of them to Mexico. I took them to Merida so that they could experience it. And a couple of friends actually went with us, and we went on an excursion to the cenotes. And Edward, one of the twins, he just fell in love because they kept calling him Lalo. And we were the only English speakers on this tour, okay? Everyone else was a native Spanish speaker. And even the tour guide, like most of it was in Spanish. He'd speak English to help, pull us in. But this lady Blanca, she lives in D.C., but she would talk to me in Spanish to help me kind of mentally like speak, you know what I mean? Like pull it out of me. And I'm like, ah. So then she talk in English. But anyway, they did such a great job of like taking care of my kids. Like even though I was on this excursion, just me and my 3 boys, this one lady and her father, they were like, oh, don't worry about it. We have them. So my 2 of them were able to go like bike ride down the path because these people like watched out for them. And I stayed on the horse cart with Edward. And then he didn't want to go into the last 2 cenotes. So he stayed with Mimo, the tour guide, oh, no worries, Lalo, I fell in love with the people, and so did my kids, and we were out at the park, and I mean, I don't know, it was so warm and welcoming, and it gave them a better view of it. We even toured a school while we were there, so they could, because at first I was thinking I'd put them in private school, so that we toured a school there, and we walked around a couple of different neighborhoods. We went to the mall, which is funny because we go to this mall, Albrista Mall in Merida, right? What do we see? Fuddruckers, IHOP, Chili's. I'm like, dude, what?
You're like, well, we could have stayed home for this.
Right? It's like, there's a Home Depot. I'm like, what is going on here? Yeah. This is Mexico. But yeah, so I think part of getting them there, getting them to embrace it, was giving them an experience of it. So it's not this unknown thing, but they have some contacts and some relationship to it. So
okay, yeah. And you said just from your email, and I'm not sure if this is still the plan, but that you were going to be around Mexico for around 6 months, and then going to places like Belize, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and then kind of staying like 30 to 90 days in each place, and home and world schooling along the way. So when you first talked to the kids, did you present it like, hey, this is what we're doing, so I know it's going to take time to get used to, or was it an open negotiation kind of thing?
I actually, because, and some people might think I'm kind of weird, our kids are not ours to own. They're little people, and so I kind of watch for how they're wired, and I try to work within their wiring. My oldest is very... what's the word? He's very left brain. He's very like, you said this, so this is what, very literal, you know what I mean? And he needs like structure. And so I know this is like way out of his comfort zone. And so I told him, I said, if you don't want to go, it's okay. I'll see about maybe if you want to stay with grandma or talk to your dad, mommy's going, me and your brothers. And I know that may sound harsh to some people, but it's almost like that put your oxygen mask on first thing. Like, I know that I was dying. I know I have to do this for me. Like, I have to do this. But I don't want me doing this for me to be a detriment to him. And so I offered that up. And he decided, no, he wants to stay with us. He's willing to do this.
It's also, he's like taking ownership of the decision.
Yeah. So it's not something mommy forced you to do. And that was open to all of them. It's not something I'm forcing you to do. And I've even committed to them that we're doing this for a year. And at the end of the year, we'll sit down and we'll assess how it's going, whether we want to keep doing it or not. Even the homeschooling thing, I told them, so this is what we're going to try. If it doesn't work, if you feel like, you're not, because he's like, really doesn't think I'm smart enough to teach him math. It's like, okay. Again, this like.
Give mom some credit, guys. Come on.
He's kind of right. Okay. He's kind of right, but I can't tell him that.
Well, that's why they have these online courses, right? In case you get into stock, you can be like, here we go. Just follow this.
Yes. Khan Academy is awesome, by the way, for parents. Like,
which one?
Khan Academy is good. Khan Academy.
Khan Academy.
Khan.
Okay.
So I can go take like fifth grade math. So that's
Is that a resource for homeschooling, Khan
oh,
Academy?
it's a resource for anyone really.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
there's adult learning stuff on there as well, but I do use it to as like they have a grammar section on there. So I've let him use that to kind of stay up on his grammar and as a refresher. So it is great for filling in the gaps. It's not a complete curriculum, but it is a good resource to use. And it'll as a parent, it'll give you a report of how long your kid has been on there, what they've learned or what they've looked at while they're on there. So it's actually a pretty good resource and it's free. So it's really good. Oh yeah, so we after a year we'll assess like how it's going and determine if we put down roots or if we keep traveling. Now, I already know in my mind, in my heart that I want to keep traveling. I'm getting my TFL certification because I really want to go teach in like Bahrain or Dubai. I didn't want to go that far this first time because that would be a huge jump for them and for me. But like in the back of my mind, that's kind of my next step. But I will be true to what I'm saying to them and we'll assess it after a year and see where it goes. I've kind of voiced that already, and the twins are like, "Oh yeah, because we want to see the tallest building." And then so they already are like, they're already excited about it. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What an adventure. And have they been in the same school their whole lives?
No, so I lived in Nashville for 16 years, which is the longest I've lived anywhere in my whole life. And I actually moved their side unseen. It's hilarious. But they've always lived in Nashville, but my oldest went to three different schools. And then my youngest, they just went to two different schools because we moved. Because when we bought a house, we moved to a new neighborhood. So they know what it's like to have to make new friends because of our most recent move. And the twins, they meet no strangers. Them, I'm not even worried about. Like I know that they'll be okay as far as making friends. My oldest is a loner by nature anyway. Um, so I don't know how this might go for him. We'll see. He even at like in Nashville, he didn't make like any lasting friendships. So I just hope, I'm like, should I do something about that? Like, what do I do? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I'm just kind of
Well,
letting him be himself.
yeah, I think that's the best thing. And I think whether somebody's like planning something like you're doing with a spouse or with kids and a family, which is a big reason why I want to talk to you, because there's some extra layers here with families and kids and stuff. But either way, it sounds like you've really like found a way to just kind of use your intuition and like kind of feel that space out between each individual kid and kind of try to create some kind of container that's still going to be comfortable for them, which is nice. All right, so you were doing HR, you mentioned, right? So that was that
At one point in life, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, what job did you leave? What were you doing?
It's so funny. I was an asset manager for a portfolio of military hotels. So the company I worked for, I don't know if you remember years ago, the Army privatized their lodging program. And so my company won that contract. And so I say we, like I'm still there. We renovated and built new hotels on Army bases. And so my job was pretty much to oversee the operations there were 40. And at some points I had all 40. At other points I had like half that, like 22 locations. So part of my job was really cool because I got to travel and I would actually stay in boutique hotels. I love boutique hotels. And so when I became a travel agent, it was really awesome because I could stay in this hotel on the company dime, but review it and like take video for my travel business, which I guess they can't do anything to me now. But yeah, so I actually enjoyed it. I started there as a receptionist because I lost my job in HR. And so I started the company as a temp, working as a receptionist, and they ended up hiring me on. So I took a big cut just doing that, but it was really a great company. And so over the 8 years I was there, I was promoted like 3 or 4 times. But that last position, it was a great position, like it was a great promotion, but what it ended up being, other than like the times I got to travel, was a bunch of reporting that didn't mean
Yeah,
anything to
okay.
anyone.
So yeah, it started
So I was,
losing its kind of.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd been there for a while, so it was a stable job. It was a good job. You even liked a good bit of it. You've had a good run there, but which sometimes can make it even harder to leave. Of course, I mean it's easy to leave a job you totally hate, but I mean when you get that dissatisfaction and you look ahead and you're somebody who knows in your heart you want to travel, it's really tempting to like do what you're doing and just take off. I wanted to get into a lot of some of the fears you're feeling right now because we're going to talk to you in the future. And by the way, there's no guarantee that you're going to be happy either. I think you will be, but we're not going to edit this and make it sound like, oh, okay, well, you know, everything's, I mean, you're just going to tell us the reality of what it is, you know, some months from now. But since we're talking to you right now, you mentioned a lot of the fears, of course, the education of your kids, and is it going to, you know, mess them up, using your words and all that stuff, and how you kind of been thinking about those. But what are some of the other things that you're nervous about and scared about?
Looking unwise. And I know like you shouldn't care what other people think, but I don't have $30,000 saved up. Like I listened to, I think it was Nick and someone you had on. He's, oh yeah, we had $30,000. I'm like, dude, I don't have $30,000. Maybe I should have been smarter about this. Like that's one of my fears is maybe I am not doing this in a very smart way.
Financially,
And
you
so
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
financially. And so I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do? And that's part of why like my travel business is established. And I'm like, okay, so I need to figure out how to make this generate a little bit more income. I became certified as a life coach. It's like, okay, so I need to work on generating more income here because those are the two ways to generate income that really are like authentic to me. And then the practicality comes in like, okay, so what if you don't have clients? You know what I mean? It's like, so then I'm like, okay, so I can teach English online, and there's a bunch of companies that do that. The TEFL certification, okay, I can do that. And so I'm trying to balance the what authentically is me, ways to generate income, and also the let's be practical, you just need to make some money ways to generate income. Because that's probably, to be honest with you, that is my biggest fear is making sure that I can provide for my family. And I will tell you, Workaway is another source. There's a ranch that reached out to me. We could live there 6 months, a ranch in San Antonio. We could actually, they want me to come there and teach. And I could go there 6 months, and all I have to do is pay for like, because my kids will be going to school at their school, and that's like 300 a month. But they provide room and board. So I'm like, that's sort of my see how this first 6 months goes, and then like reach out like, hey, Um, so my biggest fear is being able to provide financially for my kids. But that also, I considered that when I made this decision. Coming up to leaving my job, I had a good job doing stuff that really didn't require a lot of brain work. Seriously. Like I was bored. And it's like, okay, so if I leave there and do the work that I'm actually passionate about, it's basically half of what the income that I could make doing this boring job, right? And so my thing was, okay, so how can I do work that I love but still live a quality of life that works for me? And that's how leaving the country became the answer because I can live on the income generated from my travel business in another country. I can't really do it here in the United States. And so that was part of what went into this decision.
Yeah, because you're saying, oh, you're gonna making half as much, but then if it's half as expensive, then you're not really
Exactly.
taking a step. You're just taking a lateral step, essentially.
Right, right.
Of course, but you're
And
also
that's,
getting the travel experience and the newness
yeah,
and the freshness, and you're getting to do something around something that's more authentic to you, as you say in your words.
and it's exactly. And so part of the plan, so going to Mexico as a travel agent, the Mexican Riviera and even Baja, like Cabo San Lucas area, it's a big market. And so the beautiful thing is that I will be there and I can actually go and explore these places so that way when I put together these trips, I've been there. I have more insight into it. I can make connections with vendors. I actually have a retreat that I've put together for a client for next April. I'm going to be on the ground there. So I'm like, it's going to be so great to actually find vendors who can make the experience so much better for my clients. Um, so that's part of it. We actually may have found the house, 4 bedroom, 4 bathroom on the beach. Are you kidding me? For $600 a month,
What
600 US.
website did you find that?
Well, I didn't. So I told you these Facebook groups are awesome. There's a Facebook group called Casitas in Merida, which is where I was targeting, Merida, Mexico. So this one is actually in Progreso, which is 20 minutes from Merida. And I posted, hey, looking for a place, me and my 3 kids, blah, blah, blah. And a couple of people posted, but this one in particular, I get a good vibe from her. So she and I have been in communication. She sent me an agreement so that way I could see the agreement, and she's no pressure for me to sign it before seeing the place. Which one person was like, "Oh, send me this money now." I'm like,
Oh,
"No,
yeah.
that's
No,
not happening." Yeah, no. But this lady has been great to work with, and the pictures. It's not like schwanky, luxury, but that's not what I'm going there for. So far, I'm loving it. We'll see once I get there, though.
Well, believe it or not, there's a chance that we'll be in Mexico with my family
Oh.
in 5 or 6 months. So wouldn't it be so cool if we got to do this second part in person
that'd
in
be
Mexico?
awesome.
I'm just throwing that vibe out there to the universe because
I love that, and I know you like beer, so I'll try and
that would be amazing. We could we could hang out and just do this over a cerveza. Yeah, that would be awesome. There is a lot to unpack here, but I think we've covered your big fears, and the financial fears, of course, is something I think everybody's going to relate to if they're going through this transition to long-term or full-time travel. And I mean, you're doing it.
Yeah. The other fears are little things and some of them are nuances because I'm a plus size woman. So I'm like, will I be able to find clothes? You know what I mean? And I have big feet. Like, will I be able to find shoes?
These are the things that go through.
They're a little small. Yeah. And my kids like haircuts. Will I be able to find a barber for them? Should I learn how to cut hair? Because I don't do that kind of stuff. So those are like little things that those will not stop me. The biggest fear, though, I would say, is just the fine. I'm not even really the language thing is not intimidating to me. When I really tap in and the finance is probably the biggest fear.
Yeah. Well, everybody has their big and big ones and small ones and things. I mean, you can't help but when you're making this big of a change in life, like these things, random things are going to run through your mind, right? Like in the middle of the night, you're just thinking about, your kids' haircuts or whatever. It's like, oh, what am I doing? But you've tackled so many fears leading up to this, just to get to this point of letting go of your job, letting go of your house, letting go of your stuff, and all of the things it takes to do what you're doing. And then also, I think letting go of this idea of, hey, okay, so my kids aren't going to have this quote unquote traditional school existence for like this period of their lives, and who knows how long this will go, but just kind of detaching from the idea that's like could be a negative thing, because who's to say? I think it's a great thing to have your kids out of school and to be showing them the world, because they're going to learn so many things that they can never learn in a classroom.
It's so exciting. So it's exciting because, one, I will say the homeschool thing that's one of the big things I've had to research. This is funny. I have to share this. In my research, I didn't research the law. Okay. And so I didn't know that in Tennessee, you have to have an umbrella school. I didn't know this. And so one of my church members has been really great with giving me information about places to find curriculum and what she's used. And so when we were in the hotel, like leaving Nashville on our way down to Savannah, I was just logging in, just like checking in with her because I'm still researching curriculum, right? And she said, yeah, our umbrella school requires 180 days. And I was like, huh? And so I quickly Google searched umbrella school and like did a couple more searches. I apparently was breaking the law because I just didn't, because the house closed on the 10th.
Breaking the law.
Right. Right. So school in Tennessee in Davidson County started on the 7th. Well, the house closed on the 10th. I'm like, I'm not sending the kids to school for 3 days, right? I apparently was breaking some truancy law. And so it's August 13th, right? And so I just looked up the umbrella school she was using, and they had on there that they would not accept the kids if they've missed 5 days of school. That was the fifth day. So I'm calling. I'm like, yeah, da, da, da. And the lady's like, don't worry, go ahead and register. This will be considered your, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, like, it was so funny because I'm like, umbrella school? What the hell is that?
Yeah, never even knew that. That's good to be aware of. Yeah, it's
So, yes.
who would think that's a whole other debate. We don't need to get into the laws of the land when it comes to education and everything. But do you want to share some resources that have been helpful, like the big ones that have been the most helpful for you? And then we'll just share some of those.
Yeah, so I will say, it doesn't have to be super expensive, because I was looking at like the private online homeschools, and we're talking like maybe $7,000, tuition for 3 kids. Because I have 3 kids, like that's a huge, for one kid, it might not be so much, but for 3 kids, it can be a lot. And so by talking to people who they're in Nashville who already homeschooled, they like Easy Peasy is a free online, like it is free. It's all in one homeschool, or you can do like a couple of topics. And the thing to remember is that you are not required, at least in Tennessee, they don't require any particular curriculum. So you really could just get like a history textbook from like Amazon or something and teach your kids history using that textbook. Um, there's a resource called Moby Max. My mom is a teacher, so she's told me all this stuff. But Moby Max actually has math, science, English, and so it helps with any educational gaps. But they also have a state requirements kind of assessment test. So you can have your kids take that test to see where they have gaps and where you might need to augment their education. And that's like maybe $49 a year just for a subscription to that. So that's been a great resource. Easy Peasy, it's a good place to start. I didn't use Easy Peasy. I decided on, I'm kind of a nerd, so I decided on Essentials in Writing for their language arts, because I think reading and writing are like, to me, two very important things. Math is important, but let's be real. To live your everyday life, you pretty much just need fifth grade math. How do you calculate that percent off? How do you calculate this discount? Is he, giving me a good deal on this car? But like, so Essentials in Writing, which is also great because it's independent. It's video. I don't have to actually teach it. It's a video lesson, and it's, bam. And then teaching textbooks I chose from math because, again, it's online, it's independent. Because my goal was not to be their like actual teacher for everything. I want to be the resource for them, and I help them manage getting the work done and help fill in the gaps for the learning. But I didn't want to be responsible for the actual, I guess, instruction of everything.
Okay,
so,
gotcha. Yeah. That's all great stuff. Thank you. And I just want to say congratulations for everything you've done, and the fact that you're being proactive and you're going for this thing that has been, it sounds like something in your heart that you've wanted to do for a while, and now you're just like, hey, I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm not going to wait till this sort of quote unquote perfect time in life, my kids graduate and everything. I'm just going to do this now. And you're an inspiration, and
thank you.
I'm so excited. I'm so glad that you reached out, and we're going to do some time traveling here. And we're going to talk to you in some amount of months down the road after you've been out there on the road for a while. And we're going to get into that, and we're going to hear if your fears were unfounded, how you're doing with all the financial stuff, how the kids are doing, and everything like that. I'm really excited for that conversation too. So thank you so much, Jenita, and looking forward to connecting with you, hopefully in person.
That'd be awesome.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Much.
Yeah, and just being so transparent with everything. And we'll be chatting with you soon.
All right.
All right. Well. If it isn't Jenita, how are you?
Hello, I'm to see.
It's so nice to see you.
You as well.
I talked to you a little over 8 months ago, And during the interview, you also said you quit your job April 20th of last year, and that was now over a year ago. So you quit your job over a year ago, just over a year ago. And we recorded for the first time over 8 months ago, and you weren't even in Mexico yet. I'm not even sure if you're still in Mexico. Who knows where you are right now? Okay, you're in Mexico. So holy crap, we got a lot to talk about because I have a whole list here of things that we discussed before. What has been going on? Where are you?
Oh my gosh. So I am in Merida, Mexico. For a month, I stayed in Progreso, Mexico, because I found it online in one of the groups. And being American, I needed to have a plan. I needed something set up for when I got here. And so I set this place up just based on pictures and hated it.
Really? Okay. You mean the first destination or the actual accommodation you were staying at?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Yeah.
And I went with Progreso because the prices for Merida had gone up. It increased from when I first looked at it. But the price for this house was 12,000 pesos, which was about 600 US. In my novice mind, that was a great price. And it seemed really fair, And so when I got to the house and I got to Progreso, I realized that, this is not really what I want. The house was 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a really big house, but it was old. There was no air conditioning. I had to light the stove with the match. It was not plugged up to the electricity. The kitchen didn't have hot water. Lizards loved us.
The adventure begins.
Oh my gosh. The whole backyard was sand. So the beach was right behind us. But the Malecon ended behind our home, which meant people were out there drinking all night, right? And people would ride horses on the beach and they'd leave their droppings. So it wasn't exactly what you imagine as like, I'm going to live on the beach. So yeah, that didn't work out too well.
How are the boys doing?
They're doing well. So Progreso was tough because one, they weren't going to school, which they aren't now either. They were homeschooled. But the language thing was a lot worse there because we didn't interact very much with other expats. And we would go to the park. Like I'd go to the park in the evenings to do Zumba, and the kids would play with other kids. But that was the only time they ever played with other kids. And everything else we wanted was in Merida, which was a bus ride away, and was just kind of... So Progreso was not the place for us. Some people love it, but it was just not the place for us.
Yeah, so you were there for how long?
A month. Okay. 1 month.
And then you moved to Merida?
Merida, yeah. And it's not far. It's about maybe 20 or 30 minutes. But what's funny is the kids, the twins, they would be scared because we had cockroaches and lizards. And then, the people behind the house or whatever. And so some nights I'd have to sleep with them in their room. And they'd be like, when are we leaving this house? So it was, the last 2 weeks were really long, really long.
Going through things like that, do you kind of bond in a different way as a family, right?
You do. And I think it helps them learn resilience because, at the end of the day, it wasn't really that bad. It was more their imagination than anything. And so we talk about fear, how it's bigger in your head than it actually is, right? And so I think it helps them be a little bit more resilient and a little stronger and a little more, they get better at pushing through fear. So,
well, speaking of fears, let's talk about some of the ones you ticked off in the prior episode, which is connected to this one as we've time traveled already. We're 8 months ahead. We're recording this May 6th, 2019. And yeah, some of the things that you were worried about, you had some what ifs, and you talked about there were like good what ifs and bad what ifs, and we discussed some of the bad ones. You were worried about maybe messing up the boys' education with the homeschooling. You were worried about something happening in Mexico bad. You were worrying about, finding a place to live and how the boys would do and all these things. And primarily, a lot around your kids, which is obviously, as a parent, I understand that's the usually the primary concerns. Let's talk about some of those fears. Do you feel like this experiment has, I mean, if you want to call it experiment, or your new life down in Mexico has messed up their education in some way? Like, was that an unfounded fear, or?
I was very good at school. And so for me, school, and their dad is Nigerian, which if you know any Nigerians, you have to get your education, so school is a big deal. And so to take them out of conventional school, it was scary. But what I have since found, because I read this book, Outwitting the Devil, which gives you a whole different perspective about conventional education. And I did more listening to there was this family that had a podcast, and then some people that I've heard on your podcast talking about world schooling and unschooling and still being successful. Their kids still being successful, contributing, compassionate, educated human beings. And so I took the plunge. And it's been a progression of me loosening up some of the trying to make it just like school, And so I find that I do this weird combination of homeschool, world schooling, and a teensy-weensy bit of unschooling because it gives them some freedom to chase down what's interesting to them. It allows me to, like one of my kids, he just is not your conventional thinker. He's very creative, and he has a very short attention span. And so one of the things I had him do, for example, was research the life cycle, like the first 8 weeks for kittens, because our cat had had 5 kittens. And so he did it. He made a PowerPoint, and it had cute little pictures, and it had like what to expect this week, this week, this week. And so that was something that was important to him. My other son, he wanted to deep dive into black holes and wormholes, which I still don't understand, and he gave a presentation. So what I tend to do is less tests and quizzes and more tell me about what you learned, right? We went to Belize and we did an excursion of the lagoon, the 7-color lagoon. And so they each had to tell a fun fact that they learned and also explain about the lagoon. And I have them do that using PowerPoint or using, whatever creative means they want, or writing about it as opposed to giving tests and quizzes. Because think about the real world, that's what you do, right? You present information.
So, yeah, this is a totally different way of living for you guys, too. I mean, not just the homeschooling, unschooling, world schooling, hybrid, or whatever you have going on there, but also the fact that you're all together most of the day, too, right? I mean, usually kids go to school, they come back. How has that been?
So I'm having to learn or relearn self-care and decompression time. And so that's been an issue. But thankfully, they're older, and so I don't have to be with them every moment. And the way houses are made here in Mexico, I feel safe when I go off for an hour or two to the cafe and they're here working. So it's worked out pretty well. And then we have, there's some programs where they're in the program and I get to have a couple of hours to myself. So other than that, though, it's great because I think I get to learn their little personalities a bit more. And I feel like we are more of a unit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's a pretty big deal, I would say, as a family. Coming off a 2.5-month long trip with my family, I can kind of at least get a peek into what that's like to be together all the time. I mean, my kids are younger, so we're together a lot, but my daughter goes to daycare, so that was totally eliminated. And it was just, yeah, you just kind of form more of that unit. I think it's a beautiful thing. On the safety tip, obviously that was a big concern for you, leaving the country, moving to a new country, and being in Mexico with your family. Has there been any issues? What's the situation there?
It's mostly a non-factor. I mean, as a parent, you practice safety precautions anyway, no matter where you are. I would say that we feel safer here in Merida than we did when we were in Progreso. some of that has to do with how the house is made, and some of that has to do with Merida just is safer. We haven't had any incidents. We feel like there are times we'll walk from one of our little hangouts here, like 11 o'clock at night, or walk from the movie theater, and we're perfectly fine, so we haven't had any issues at all. And I don't feel unsafe here at all.
So you sold your house, you got rid of all your stuff, you didn't put it in storage. We talked about that in the last section of this. And how do you feel about those decisions now?
I wish I'd kept more clothes.
Well, that's funny. That was one of your concerns because you said you weren't sure if you were going to be able to get clothes down there. Has it been a hard time?
And then, so it's funny, the first month I lost a little weight because in Progresso I had to cook and we walked everywhere. And when I moved here to Merida, there's Uber Eats and Rappi, which delivers groceries and food. And then with the way that I work, I don't really feel like cooking, and it's cheaper sometimes just to eat out. So I've gained a little weight, which does not help because when I went to the mall, the first time I had sort of a nervous breakdown. I'm walking through Sears, and I'm looking for the plus section, which, it's not in English. And I'm looking, and I go round in circles, and I finally just stand there and go, I'm in the land of little people. And I know they looked at me like I was crazy.
So you wish you kept some clothes, but other than that, I mean, what about the house? Has that been?
I'm okay with it. Yeah, honestly, I hear I have a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 2-story house with a garden. That's comparable in most ways to what I had in the United States. Only I don't have to worry too much about the maintenance and upkeep. That's the landlord's problem. Where we are, I don't need a car. We walk to everything, or we take the bus, or we Uber.
I love that. Totally different change of life, right? Like daily life.
Yeah. Oh, no. Mm-hmm. And I've become a hammock lover. I love ending my day in my hammock on my back patio, and the wind blows in my garden. It has these vines on the wall and these yellow flowers, and then I have the orange flowers in the flower bed. And it's just like the wind blowing and rustling the flowers, and I'm lying in my hammock looking at the stars, and I absolutely love my life. I love it. So I have no regrets about stuff other than I wish I had more clothes.
Now, is this like a month-to-month situation, or are you still treating this as a year-long kind of experiment thing, or do you feel like you're settling in more? Because things obviously change, which is why we're having this chat now. I'm just curious where you're at with all that.
So the first 7 months, the first 7 months was really me asking myself, okay, what am I doing? Do I want to do this? What the hell does this mean? So we did the month in Progresso, and I met a woman here who helped me find a place, and we negotiated a contract for a house, which I decided to stay in one place instead of, I think I initially wanted to maybe travel 3 to 6 months and like go somewhere different. What I realized is that like one of my sons, I think he might have Asperger's. I've never had him tested, but he gets very agitated when things are too different, right? And so having some stability works for him. And even for me, like having a place to come back to, it feels better than living this transitional, because that month at my mom's and then the month in Progresso, I just didn't like being so transitional. So for us, having a home base works. And so I decided to sign a year-long lease here. And at our 6-month mark, like right before 6 months, we traveled to Mexico City, Belize, Chetumal, Bacalar, Celestune. So we did some traveling outside of here. And it all confirmed that we were in the right place. Like we love to visit those other places, but Merida is the right place for us. And so we'll be here probably for another at least 18 months to 2 years. We'll see.
Okay, wow. And the boys are on board with this because I know you mentioned kind of checking in with them and seeing how they were responding and kind of having those open conversations. Have you had to have any heavy conversations with them?
Oh, yeah. At one point, they were frustrated about not having friends and about not being with other kids. And so one of them now is in soccer. My eldest was in Taekwondo for a couple of months, but he didn't really like it. So, but there's a homeschool co-op that we're a part of. We go every Friday. And then there's an art class at a language school here. And so they go every Tuesday. And then my teen got involved with the teen meetup, some of the expat kids, because it's hard being a teenager in this life, is what I've discovered. The younger kids, it's almost okay, but the teenagers, it's tough. So he's a part of that teen meetup. And those things have helped tremendously. We have a meetup today at the arcade at 4:00.
So this is part of the expat community. Is that right? Some of these things, or is this local meetup stuff too?
So I am all about making sure they also have local kids. And so the soccer is so here in Mexico, you have deportivos, and it's the sports center. And so the soccer and taekwondo are all at the deportivo. So my son is the only English speaker on the team, which he's still, and I feel outside, like when the parents are all there, because I'm still learning Spanish. And so I'll say, caminado, and just, ask little like one word question. But it's good, it's good. And then the art class is at a language school. And so there are local children and expat children. So they get to use both. And the instructor, he says things in Spanish to help them begin to learn Spanish, but he also speaks English. The homeschool co-op, it's a mix of local children, so Mexican kids, and some expat kids, as well as like one child is from Hungary. He speaks 3 or 4 languages, so it's like, so they have I feel like it's a good mix of kids, not just expat children, but also Mexican kids.
So what kind of advice would you give to people that are considering something like this? I guess from a research perspective, because it seems like a lot of the things you've been able to accomplish in terms of like getting them into sports and kind of making adjustments on the fly and finding the communities and all that type of stuff, you can only research so much, right? A lot of it's kind of boots on the ground stuff. So did you find that a lot of the research you put in on the front end paid off, or did it all kind of just change anyway? So you had to just figure it out once you arrived? Like, what kind of advice would you give around that? Like, how much research should people do before they move to another country, or say move to Mexico or something, versus just kind of like getting certain ducks in a row and just kind of figuring out when you're there?
I would say the first thing and the main thing is to visit the place you think you want to move to. I loved Merida. I knew that. So that part I knew, and I brought my kids so they could get their own experience. And so that part I knew for sure, right? And from there, it was pretty much, I found a local person here who was able to, she took me on a tour of the different neighborhoods, because the only thing that I knew from here was one neighborhood called Garcia Jimenez and Centro, which is the tourist area. And so she took me on a neighborhood tour, and what I was looking for, so I would say the next piece of advice is to know how you live, because living in a place and visiting a place are two very different things. You're not there to be entertained 24/7, right? And so you have to think about, and what I thought about was, I want my kids to be able to ride bikes. I want them to go outside to play. I want parks nearby. I want restaurants and grocery stores nearby. And so when we looked at homes, that's what I was looking for, not all the entertainment stuff. And so I would say, know how you live, how you actually live. Don't be impressed by the, all the tourists, the restaurants, no, because those are overpriced anyway. So, and then the last thing I would say is be open, because what you think you want in the beginning can change, right? And what you think you like about a place might be completely different once you soak in it a little bit. So be open to the differences, be open to what how it changes you. Because there's times when I have to shake off the American, like, okay, what's my expectation here? So those are probably the main things I would say. Visit the place first, know how you live, and then be open.
I think that's 3 incredibly important points and great advice. All right, from a financial standpoint, because this is the next big thing, how is that going? I mean, you were working on getting your business off the ground, but it seems that you cut your expenses down just by being in Mexico where it's more affordable. Can you talk about where you're at with all of that?
So income is still, I think if you're not a retired expat or if you don't have like loads of money, income will always be a concern. And so far, I've been able to live off the commission that I make from my travel business. And I started teaching English online in January. Plus, I get child support from their dad. So those 3 things, that's how I make income. I am working towards refining my business. And I'm also working towards researching things like affiliate marketing. Do I want to pursue the coaching thing? Because I'm a certified life coach. And so it's looking at, okay, what are some other ways that I can earn income that'll give me more bang for the hours I put in? Because I don't want to work more than 20 hours a week. That part of it, I'm telling you, I don't want to work more than 20 hours a week because I didn't come here to work 50 hours a week. So that's what I've been very conscious of. And when I feel myself working way too much, step back. We might go to the beach for the day. I go hang with friends just to kind of get myself out of rat race mode and back into joy life mode, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But yeah, so budget wise, I pay 8,000 pesos, which is about, depending on the value of the dollar, which you learn to track when you're an expat. You're always like, what's the dollar value today?
Tell me about it.
Oh my gosh. At one point, it was 20.34 pesos per dollar. And it was like, woohoo, I'm going shopping. So my rent is about anywhere from $415, I think, to like maybe $450 a month. And again, that's for a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 2-story with a garden and they like a garage kind of carport thing. I don't know what they call it. Colchon, I think. And for lights, they bill you every 2 months here. So for electric, I pay, the highest it's been is 1,400 pesos. But the last 2 bills were under 500 pesos. So under $25 for 2 months of electric service.
Wow. For 4 people.
Yeah. And for water, I pay about 100 pesos every 2 months. That's like $10, $10, depending on the value of the dollar. For gas, which heats the water and my stove, I pay for my tank. It costs maybe 400 pesos to fill it, and it lasts 2 months. So again, $25 for the gas. I have a housekeeper who comes once a week. She's like $16 a day or 300 pesos. I have a gardener who comes twice a month. I have laundry service, which I love. I send the laundry to them, and they bring it back clean, folded, and wonderful. And that cost me, I've not paid more than 250 pesos for our laundry. So it's like, what, $12 maybe, if that, depending on the value of the dollar. So I love it. Absolutely love it. So my total budget for just living expenses is maybe half of what my old mortgage was. Clearly,
the ability to cut your expenses in that way and also even add some, I guess you would call them perks into your life that you didn't have before. You didn't have somebody coming and picking up your laundry and dropping it off, and a housekeeper, and this thing, and definitely changed your quality of life. Is there anything that you miss about being in the United States?
Yeah, so Mexico is very much a cash-based society. Mm-hmm. And so I miss being able to just use my debit card everywhere. So you need cash? And I'm like, it feels like every time I have cash, I spend it all. So then I need cash. I don't have any. So I would say that's one thing. And it's not a bad thing. It's not that I would change it. It's more I need to adjust better. I don't, honestly, there isn't anything that I miss that much. Good sushi. It's probably the biggest thing. So yeah, good sushi I miss, and Thai food.
All right. Yes. Yeah. I get the longings for certain foods as well. You should have seen how I went crazy when I went back to the States recently. I mean, all the things that I don't get to have, my favorite places, I just stuffed my face full. But I mean, that's a pretty short list, considering, I mean, it's not the big things that one might think. Do you have a car down there, or you do not have a car, right?
I don't have a car. Now, I will tell you, so from my kids' perspective, they miss friends. So they miss that part of school, but they don't miss school, So they miss having like the friend, and I say them, the twins do. My eldest, he's a loner anyway. And so he loves homeschool and he's fine with it. I have to make him go be around people sometime. But yeah, that's the one thing they miss. And then my other son said he misses chicken and waffles. So yeah.
Nice. Well, what about just going back to the daily life again, because I think the term you used is the rat race mode, I think you said. I mean, I feel it too as an expat in Norway, and I work for myself, so I am kind of on my own doing my own thing, but it seems that even the work culture in Norway is, well, I mean, there's certainly stresses and everything, but there's still not that extra element. It doesn't seem like there's that extra element of anxiety that's permeating the entire culture, right? For a variety of reasons. I mean, rightfully so in many ways. I mean, people are trying to figure out, well, how can they get insurance for their family? And everybody's kind of like trying to figure out their own situations and make things happen for their families. And like when it comes down to it, people just want to take care of their families, right? So, but when you step out of that, it certainly does change your, I don't know, you're just in a different, for lack of a better term, like vibe, kind of. But over a period of like days and months and then years, and how has being out of the corporate America type scene changed you as a person?
So what I didn't realize was how much my experience with my previous manager affected my self-assurance, I guess, about my work, because he was a micromanager, and I didn't realize that it had gotten to me. And so I was starting to like second guess everything I was doing, And so coming out of that and realizing that your work is your work, like no one is micromanaging you, no one is, it's your work in the marketplace, or your clients, that's who will tell you whether or not what you're doing is of value, if it's good, right? So that was kind of shifting my mindset from someone's like, I guess, overseeing or managing what you're doing. I hope I'm explaining that right. The second thing is but when you're in corporate America, you become very, I guess it's the same vein. Someone else is evaluating you, and you have to do the semi-annual performance reviews. So there's all these hoops you have to jump through. And so I'm like, I've released myself from all the hoops. I released myself from what a title means. Like my little sister, she said something the other day about looking for this, or she got a job offer, and it would put her back to a manager title. She'd have the same job or same work, but it'd just be a manager title. And in my mind, I'm like, who cares, right? Like, what the hell? Like, whatever. But like, I no longer care about that kind of stuff, like the title and what someone else deems as my value. And I will say the anxiety thing, though. So I was actually working this morning, and I had this idea, and I'm getting it together, and there was like this anxiousness, right? This anxiety, and I had to say to myself, "Calm down, girl. Like there's no just calm down. Just
Well, it's built into us because we grew up in it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and I mean, sometimes I think it can be to my advantage personally, right? It's like, all right, this is like sort of this extra hustle that I might have, you know, growing up on the East Coast and being from the States and all that. Not that other countries are lacking that, but it's just, you know, everybody has their own unique experiences. And I think if you've ever like worked in the States and you've had the hustle to like make things happen, then you know what I'm talking about, or anywhere for that matter. But so that can be advantageous if you look at it that way, but also, yeah, like the anxiety part, not good, right?
Because it's adding stress. And again, I go back to, you know, if it doesn't bring you joy, why are you doing it? And not that every aspect of what you do, because I hate the bookkeeping part, right? And I hate like
sucks.
going to log my commission, like data entry, like I don't want to do this, right? But when you when there's more anxiety than there is joy, when there's more dread than there is excitement and engagement, then I think you have an issue, right? Because I can be anxious. Like I had a group that I planned a trip for, and they came a couple weeks ago, and so there was anxiety, but it was that, you know, it was that excited, like flowing. It's a different kind of anxiety, right?
Right.
And
kind of
so
like I want this to go off well. I want these people to have a good time.
Exactly. So, but I agree with you. I think if it's in the right amounts and in the right moments, it's an advantage, right? It's that American ingenuity, that American, you know, stick, whatever it's called. But when you're out of balance, it's what causes stress.
Right.
It's what causes, you know, all the health issues that we have, and so.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how you can take a person who is, you know, the same person and put them into a different place and a different culture and just see how that changes you. You know, like just changing your physical location. Right now, we know, of course, like all the things we've talked about too. It's more than just that, because you've had to let go of, you know, your house. There was a whole process getting here, and then you've even gone further, as you've mentioned, letting go of, you know, an identification with the job title and different things like that have come with this experience. But at the core of it, right, where you're taking yourself and putting yourself in just a different physical location and a different culture, and being surrounded by that, and that has a huge influence as well. I mean, when you reflect on it, it's hard to say, well, what exactly, you know, all of these experiences change you, but that element of it, it's hard to say how much it's changed you, or maybe you can pinpoint it a little bit, but I just find it interesting.
What may scare some people is, who are you without the job title and without the stuff? Who are you? Right? Because what I find for a number of Americans, and not just, I can only speak to Americans because that's where I'm from, but what we do for a living and the stuff that we have, it's like what others notice most about us, or what sometimes helps us feel more important or gives us identity, right? So who are you without the title, and who are you without the stuff? And I think that for some people, that's scary. You know, for some people, it's like they don't want to do the work to find out who they are without the stuff, and they don't want to be without the stuff because I worked hard for this stuff. And, you know, so for me, that's been key, is without the stuff, because, you know, getting in the house was proving that I could do this as a single mom, and I got this, you know, but it's like, okay, so now what? You proved that, and what? Right? And so for me now, it's really, when I say to you, back to the joy, like even parenting, it gets frustrating as hell, but I have to go back to the joy. Why am I doing this? What am I trying to teach my kids? What do I want? You know, envisioning who they're becoming. Who am I becoming through this? That's kind of how I navigate this life. That's kind of where I am right now, is who am I becoming? Who are they becoming? And how is this experience lending itself to all of that? So.
It seems like with some of the additional help that you mentioned before and just having more time and not having to earn as much, really, I mean, you have the ability to not have to be micromanaged by somebody else, right? And it seems like, which is nice, yay. And also, I guess it seems like there might be more time for reflection on these types of things, right? I mean, is that in and of itself like sort of feeding some kind of momentum in terms of personal growth when it comes to having the time to just take a look at it and kind of think about it and process and experience the joy and have time to reflect on like, oh, okay, I should be having more joy in this moment. Is that something that's changed you?
Well, yeah, but I think that's important for anybody, no matter where they are. For me, I've had to make sure to maintain it because so at one point the income generation became like a really big deal and I gave up my mornings. So I was scheduling classes at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. And I did that for a couple of weeks and it was like my life seemed to go like off kilter and I was more irritable. And so I had to have a meeting with myself and realize that my mornings are really important to me. And so from 5 till about 7 a.m., I master my morning. I say my gratitude, I go get my coffee. I may go exercise, still working on the consistency of that. I go out on my rooftop terrace and I do some stretching and breathing and, my fake form of Tai Chi mixed with yoga, mixed with just stretching, and I may write in my journal. So all that, those 2 hours are really me getting myself ready to enter this day, right? And thinking it like just kind of tapping in to see what's on the surface for me, like what's the big deal. And today, actually, it was about, the joy of my family because I was starting to get really frustrated with the whole parenting and I had to tap back into part of why I did this was to enjoy them. I get joy from my kids when I'm not frustrated about the responsibility, right? So I think no matter where you are, no matter who you are, it's important to have that reflection, whether you do it in the morning, whether you do it at lunchtime, whether you do it at the end of the day, but you to really be, I guess, intentional about your life, you should reflect. You should reflect and, is this a good decision? Did I do this well? Maybe I should do this differently. Why did I do this in that moment? Right? It's important for everybody.
Thinking back to before you got on the plane to Mexico and you got there, to now, because we did do some serious time traveling today. Yeah. Did the expectations that you had, did it match up to the reality of the situation, and in what ways, and in what ways didn't it?
So I expected that my coaching business would just like take off like that. And I expected that financially things would go differently. They didn't go the way that I'd hoped, but I'm still okay. And so I had to kind of adjust there. And then what you think is reasonable on paper, like once you begin like living in a place, you begin to realize that it's different. Right. And I'll just say, like, I think a lot of expats come here to Mexico and they have a much higher budget than they really need. And so honestly, for me, my living expenses are lower than what I anticipated previously. So, and then as far as other stuff, honestly, I don't know that I had any huge expectations. The lesson I learned when I came to visit here in 2017 was to go into it with no expectations and just be open to whatever it was going to be. And honestly, even listening to like your show and how people that go into a situation and come out like completely different, I knew not to have too many expectations about what this was going to be. So that part.
It's a great approach, right? Like, it's not always easy to do, I think, as travelers or just an individual moving to another country. I mean, you're going to get ideas on what it's going to be like. So trying to fight that off and understand, okay, this is just my mind sort of conjuring what this may be. But I mean, that goes with anything, right? You know, you have a big speech at work or something, and you try to visualize it, and then it doesn't go that way, and it's like, oh no. So it's like this delicate balance for all humans, right? To kind of manage expectations or totally detach from them, ideally, would be the other end of the spectrum, versus I don't know.
I think managing is more realistic. I think managing expectations is more realistic than like completely detaching from them. I will say that it's actually, like I said, I didn't have any major expectations other than I thought I'd be, fluent in Spanish by now, but I'm not. So,
yeah.
That didn't.
Well, don't get down on yourself. It's not easy to learn a language. Trust me. I know.
I'm better, but I am nowhere near fluent. And I have not prioritized it to the point where I'm willing to go pay for a class yet. I thought about it, but I'm like, I'll get it. But I will say one of the surprising things for me has been the relationships that I've built here. I am absolutely blown away with the friends that I've made here, and I am so thankful. Day one, I met this woman named Barbara, and she's a lawyer here, so she helped me get out of the contract that I had in that house in Progresso, and she helped me find my new house. And then I met, there's Merida Coffee Club. Facebook groups, by the way, are awesome when you're moving to a place. They're awesome to ask questions and whatnot. But there's this group, Merida Coffee Club, and I met this couple who, he's Mexican, she's American, but they're married and moved here from Oklahoma City. So, and then I met Cassie and Nate, who Cassie and Nate. I've met so many great people. And in one of the groups, this guy the other night posted that his birthday was coming up and was asking, are there any events? And if not, he'd just have champagne at home by himself. And so I was like, well, hey, if you want, I'll meet you somewhere and have a birthday drink, which sounds really crazy. Like, you really, safety, caveat, don't do that. But then, like, all these other people are like, sure, we'll meet up. So 10 strangers came out to celebrate the birthday of another stranger, right? And only living this expat life would that happen, So, yeah, and now we're all meeting up for dinner in a couple of weeks at this one guy's house. And so I love it. I love it.
That's fantastic. So it doesn't sound like you have any big regrets. I mean, you've kind of painted you've given us the updates, I feel, in a way that is, there's some ups, there's some downs, but overall, satisfied.
Overall, it's good. Yeah, and I don't want to give anyone any false ideas. Are there challenges? Of course there are. I mean, you have challenges moving from Chicago to New York, so there are challenges. There are language issues. Like I said, I had a meltdown in the mall. There's some days when my brain does not want to figure stuff out, and I'm like, can you just do this? So you have those moments, but all in all, I have no regrets. I am hopeful about what's to come. I look forward to, building a life here in Merida for a span of time. But I also know that I'm open to travel other places. Because there's still parts of Mexico that I would love to see and maybe even live in other parts of Mexico. But I just think for us right now, this is the perfect place for our level of comfort and adventure, and for where we are as a family right now. So I have no regrets.
And it's wonderful to kind of just be aware of that. And also, I love that you just did this and then you got into it, and like you said, you're figuring stuff out as you go, but also now it sounds like this always happens when you get that first thing, right? Now it's like, okay, now there's sort of this open road where you're saying, all right, we're going to be here for maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years, we don't know, but then we're kind of open to a lot of different things. And I think gets really exciting looking into the future. Not that you have to right now. It sounds like you guys are really content, but just so many things open up when you kind of realize, hey, this is something I can do. I can just move to Mexico with my family and like homeschool my kids. And this is totally different than what you did before. Completely different life.
Yeah. And you find out things that you find out once you do it. It's kind of like when you're going to the gym, the hardest part is putting on the shoes and leaving. And it's kind of the same with this life. Once you get here, you realize that it is sustainable, right? And that there are resources and there are options depending on how you want to live. Like I actually just found out that Tennessee has a cyber school. And so I can enroll my kids in cyber school and they're in the state, school system. I didn't know that before I left home. So you find out things that you as you do it, you find out things that make it much easier to continue. So
awesome. And one more time, we'll mention your website if you'd like to give people a link. Now's the time.
Sure. www.lawaltravel.com. And I'm on IG as Lawal Travel. And if they want my personal, I think I just changed it. It's like JLawal_ATW on IG. So
awesome. I so appreciate you checking in with us. And can you send me some pics that we can post up so we can see you guys down in Mexico?
Sure, I'll do that.
Would love to see that and post them up with the show notes. It'll be interesting, I think, for you to listen to this episode, hearing you before, because I just listened to it, but I don't know if you have recently. So we're smushing this all into one episode, and we get to see like this sort of transformation, all the things that you've done over the last basically 8 months since we recorded. And I just really admire what you've been able to do, and also just having the guts to do it and just make it happen. And now you're there. Sounds like living a pretty good life and enjoying yourself and spending a lot of time with your family. And that's all beautiful stuff. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us.
Well, thank you. And I just, anyone who's thinking about it, I will say, you do it afraid. You do it afraid. You do it with that little quiver in your stomach. And just know that, you'll get through it. There were nights when I was like staring at the ceiling thinking, what have I done? What have I done? But you breathe, you figure out the next 2 steps, and you keep going. Yeah, so. Yeah.
Love it. You're an inspiration. Thank you, Jenita. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I swear we got to do this in person sometime. We missed you when I was in Mexico. Like I feel like I barely missed you when we were in Mexico, but we know where you're at now, and we know you have a big house, so we're gonna come and stay in it. No, we're not gonna. We won't invite ourselves. But if we're welcome, we just might show up at the door. I don't know. We'll see.
Everyone's welcome. That's what you could stand.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Jason.
Thank you so much.
All right.
There you have it. Another Transition to Travel episode in the books. I love making these. I love these long-term projects. They're unique. And if you have a story that you think you might want to share, say you're in the beginning stages of making a big change that's going to incorporate more travel into your life, and you want to put it out there. You want to help some other people in the Zero to Travel listening community and share your story. Just hit me up, Jason@zerototravel.com. Anytime, let me know what you're planning, what you're doing. Maybe you'll be the next one from the community featured on this very podcast. I want to thank each and every one of you who took time to listen to this show, and really appreciate you just being a part of the Zero to Travel caravan. I get my energy and my drive to keep this podcast going from you, my friends. So just get in touch if you haven't yet. Just say hi and let me know who you are, what you're up to, and sign up over at zerototravel.com if you haven't done that yet. We got some cool stuff for you that you can't get on the podcast. And yes, I am recording some exclusive audio coming up that's going to go out to the community email newsletter. So all kinds of stuff happening. If you dig the podcast and you haven't signed up yet, hit pause, just wrap up here, sign up over there. Would love to welcome you into the online community there so you don't miss anything. And I just want to thank you once again for your time. I'm going to leave you with a quote. Jenita mentioned the word joy several times, and that's a word that I don't use very often, but I feel that is an important word. And that's why I'm going to leave you with this quote from Rumi, who said, "When you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy." Thanks again for listening. See you next time. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.